A lot of the emergency department is reassuring people. Like to say, look, listen, you've done this, but it'll be grand. If it goes this way, you're good. If it goes that way, come back and see me.
They can be a bit rough and things can snap and you can literally break your penis.
Well,
I know exactly what bit you're talking about.
Yeah, you can play a bit of country music on it and some.
Yeah. I'm Jennifer Zamparelli, and today I'm joined by medical doctor, Olympic rower and Dancing with the Stars alumnus, Dr Philip Doyle, to talk about what men are really carrying, why they leave things too late, and how the modern man is supposed to look after himself without making a national incident out of it. Philip, thanks for doing this.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
How's life?
It's good. It's very enjoyable. It's hectic, but it's fun.
Do you like being busy?
If I'm not busy, it causes issues. Yeah, big time. It's the age old, like the day of the wedding, the dad of the bride starts to cut the grass and says that's the day the shed needs fixed. Like it's because he's too much time in his hands that day. There's too much time set aside.
Gotcha.
So I'd be very much like that.
I got that impression from you when we met on Dancing with the Stars last season, where you did a phenomenal job. But you have this real, no matter how busy you are and the pressures that you're under, you have, maybe this is why you're an Olympian, you have this level head on you.
I think I get that more from the work than the athlete side of things, because I think the athlete side of things, you always have to be doing something physically active, mentally preparing, even like actively recovering. This active recovery thing drives me mad. Sometimes I like just bam out on the sofa. But the medical side of things is like, keep that. It doesn't matter, like the patient could be sitting there and you could be thinking, oh my goodness, they're wrecked. But in your mind, you have to be like, don't let your face show them.
Okay.
So you always have to have this calm exterior.
Yes, I never forget. That just reminds me, my daughter sliced her finger open before she went on stage in this drama class, right?
Yeah.
And my friend's dad was there, and he's a GP, he's a doctor, like yourself. And I took her straight to him and I was like, oh my God. And he looked at her and he goes, oh my God, that's nothing. It's completely fine. You'd be fine to go on stage, go and do the show. Anyway, she went and did the show. She came off. And while she was coming off stage, she wasn't in earshot. I said to him, oh, thank you so much. It obviously wasn't that serious. He goes, no, it was terrible. She should have been brought to the hospital. But the plaster will do her and you can take her later. I was like, oh my God. So that it's just having that knowing voice.
Yeah.
To calm you down, because a lot of it is not in your head, but you just need that reassurance. And that's why you're here, Philip. That is why you're here today, to reassure the men of Ireland that it's going to be okay. Because there is that thing with men. They have this, they're Olympic level at saying, I'm grand, and they put things off and they leave it and it's probably nothing. If somebody comes into you, a bloke, and says, oh, it's probably nothing, but I have this thing, do you immediately worry?
I don't worry, but I'm a big believer in, I always say to like patients in the hospital, they'll be saying to me, oh, do I have to stay? And I always just say, look, there's no bouncer on the door. You can leave at any time. I'm telling you not to, but you can do whatever you want. You have to give them the power to make that decision themselves. So if somebody comes in, like say for example, there was someone on the show and they had done something, they dislocated their thumb and they sort of asked me to have a look at it.
We're talking about Dancing with the Stars.
And I was like, you need to go and get that x-rayed. Look, it's probably fine, but you need to get it x-rayed. And they were like, oh, I don't want to go. And I just looked up and I was like, you don't have to go. I don't care. It's your dancing career. It doesn't matter to me. I was like, I'm going to walk off here. I'm going back, get a coffee. You can decide whether you want to go or not. I'm telling you to go, but you have to decide yourself. So like, I think a lot of men are like, no, it'll be fine. Sometimes it's not. But like that stoic man, that Irish man for the last 40, 50 years still is very much alive, especially in more rural communities. Like we find that a lot. Down in CUH one day, I had this guy come in and 2 weeks after a stroke. And he only came in because he couldn't physically milk that morning. The arm was so contracted from the stroke, keeping going for so long, that he rang the daughter and said, can you come and help with the milking? And that was the first sign that he had told anybody anything was wrong. But, the arm was so wrecked up from
he couldn't move it.
2 weeks ago he had the stroke.
Yeah.
And I was like, what took you so long? And he's like, oh, I was sure I was able to get on with things. So I just cracked on.
And not to be sexist, but do you see it more in men?
Men have a lot less patience. Women, I find, are very much more, "Oh, it is what it is. I am where I am. I need to get this fixed." Whereas men, if they don't see it as a physical barrier, do you know, if there's no physical barrier there, oh, like I might lose the limb, but at the moment I haven't, and I probably have something I've booked in tomorrow morning. So I roll the dice. Whereas that risk-taking behavior that men have is just so much more prevalent. I don't know, like I can't obviously generalize an entire
But from
gender.
your experience.
From experience,
Okay.
from seeing people, men will roll the dice and take risks way more than women will, on average.
And what about something not, I don't know if subtle is the right word, but talking about sexual health and the problems, because we might all encounter a bump in the road, a problem along the way, if we're fortunate enough to get to, 60s and 70s. And I'm sure men will have issues, whether it's erectile dysfunction or performance issues. How do we get to the bottom of that if they're not coming and talking about it? I mean, do they just suffer, just live on and deal with it?
Yeah, and I think like that, the only place that I have seen that has it gets its day is in friends groups, close friends groups, that like close male bond that you form when you're young. But I think a lot of people sort of step away from that now. Like we have this sort of digital connection, but a very thin physical connection a lot of the time. So people don't have that opportunity to open up. But in the hospital, we don't see that very much. It's more of a GP in the clinic sort of problem. And in Ireland, it's very much like, especially that sexual nature to health, and especially that sort of STI and things going wrong down there. Like there's a real taboo subject around that, especially in Ireland. And people are like, oh no, but it's not a taboo, and we want to open up discussion and we want to make it more accessible. But we still have a very separate clinic called the GUM clinic, the genital urinary medicine clinic.
Yeah.
And like I have nothing to do with that. You can self-refer, you can direct refer. And like even the fact that they're like, oh, you don't need to go to the doctor to come to us, you can self-refer, so you can bypass that system, as in like, we know you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it, which then at the same time opens up that pathway for people who don't want to talk about it. But then the people who do want to talk about it are like, oh, I shouldn't talk about it because they're telling me, just go straight there. Don't pass go. Don't collect 200 quid. Like, don't annoy the doctor. Just go straight there and we'll get it sorted for you in the hush place off to the side that's kind of separate from the hospital, has its own separate little entrance, which provides anonymity and privacy for a lot of people. But then on the other side can actually create a barrier to people who don't see that as an issue, and it creates it as an issue. So where do you find the balance there?
And even with the self-testing, now you can order a test online for an STI and it comes straight to your house, and it can be very discreet. And I suppose that has its advantages, but then it's kind of promoting secrecy.
It's also the secret thing, the hush. But you give those people that option. And like in the hospital, a lot of the time, I'll be like, look, there's nothing there from my point of view. There could be something along those lines.
Yeah.
There could be something that you need to look into there. And I'll recommend them that website. It's free. In the UK, it's definitely free. The H24 one. And I'll say, look, you just go on the website and order the kit. To give you peace of mind, it's free, it's there, use it. And a lot of time I'll say, when was the last time you tested? When was the last time you looked into it? You'd be shocked the amount of people who would say, oh, I've never had it done.
Really?
You'd be shocked, yeah. And people in their late 20s, early 30s, I've never had it done.
Because no one's talking about it.
There's like a barrier to access almost, which is, I don't know if opening it up makes it more accessible or closing it down makes it less, or it's not my expertise, but it's very hard to get Irish people to find that a normal thing.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I just have a distinct memory before we stopped using protection, even 20 years ago with my now husband, then partner, and he grew up in the UK, that we both went to the clinic and got checked out before we decided not to use protection. Like that was just a normal thing to do, It was very normal. It was very blasé. There was no big deal about it. So it's kind of worrying to hear that in Ireland in 2026 that there's that secrecy and that fear of being tested.
And I think there'll always be that level. I don't think you'll ever get that out of Ireland. I think that's a generational, that'll be a full public health blanket campaign, multiple, you'll need good 10, 15 years to cycle by to get that more in the open. But then you don't want people, every single time they, have an interaction, then running to be like, right, I need to get tested straight away. Or, you can use other precautions and you can interact with it in a different way.
Of course.
Safe sex isn't just having random sex with somebody and then testing yourself afterwards.
No.
That's a reckless way, like, to go about it as well. But it needs to be a balance, and education. Like, I'm out of school system so long, and I haven't really had much to do with it, but the education system in schools probably can go a big way towards improving that.
Absolutely. And it's getting there. It's not quite there. And I think if you're anyway worried about it or concerned, and you have, consenting, children 18 plus, maybe have that conversation as a parent and help them out that way if they're not getting it at school. Can I ask you, and I know you don't work in the gum clinic, but what's rampant at the moment in STIs?
Well, I have a friend, Dr Gareth Patterson. He's over in London, and there's a big bout of bad chlamydia going around at the minute. He's a GP in London, and he does a lot of sexual health stuff and a lot of aesthetic stuff as well. But he was doing some work around that recently. So I think it's making a bit of a comeback.
Chlamydia is making a comeback.
Yeah, apparently.
What are the symptoms for chlamydia?
Oh, don't ask me. I've never had it, thank God.
Yeah. But is chlamydia the one where a lot of them can go under the radar?
Discharge. A lot of it's sort of discharge.
Okay.
There wouldn't be so much pain, a little bit of redness potentially, but mostly would be discharge, and you can feel a bit unwell if it sort of goes on a long time. But it's a simple prescription. It's you can get a 1-dose antibiotic, or you can do a 5 to 7 day course of doxycycline, and it's gone most of the time.
And lads, especially you guys, if you're listening, the problem with this is if it persists and you don't get it treated, it can result in complications, infertility.
It can really drop the sperm count and stop that spermatogenesis, which creates new sperm, that sort of just damages that process, that system.
Just going back to lads talking about sex and being open and them moving away from WhatsApp groups, which can be problematic because if guys have an issue with performance, let's say, where do they go and what do they do?
Most of them buy a packet of blue pills over the internet, to be completely honest with you, when they're away with their mates and lads groups or on holidays. Obviously, that'll sustain your
erection,
attention, but it won't create it. Viagra itself, all it does is help sustain that.
Okay.
So it creates a vasodilation effect. Actually, originally, it was sildenafil, which is what it's called, was created for pulmonary hypertension in newborn children, and then they found that it actually had, like in premature babies, and they actually found then that it had this secondary effect that then made it more producible to the mass market of young gentlemen and older gentlemen. But a lot of people I'm not sure about the access to it now at the moment. It was prescription only for a long time. I think you can buy it over the counter now with the pharmacist. If the pharmacist, you can get a one-on-one consultation with them, so you can bypass your GP, bypass the doctor completely. I think you just need to have a wee chat with the pharmacist, and certain prescribing pharmacists can give it out. But beforehand, whenever I was in college, a lot of people would have been very much like, oh, I was in Thailand, brought back a box of it. And sure, what's the regulation there? Are you getting the full dosage, or you're not getting the dosage? Or
what are the things that men tend to sit on for months?
I don't know.
Well, you kind of mentioned that things that aren't as like it's going to physically stop them in their tracks.
Yeah, things that don't stop them.
Yeah,
blood in the poo, big thing. They'll just be like, oh yeah, that's been happening months. And I'm like, why, and he's like, oh, but they're going to have to do a camera up the waxy, I call it, even when I'm speaking to patients.
Do you?
Yeah.
Very professional of you, Philip.
What else do you call it? I don't know.
I think the technical term is anus.
Well, I don't know.
Rectum.
Yeah.
So okay. So up the waxy, they don't want to get the camera. Okay.
They don't want to get the camera test. They want to avoid it. Just move on. Do you know, like that stoic man rocks in, and it's either they're found drop dead face first with a massive heart attack somewhere, or they bring them in, oh, I wasn't feeling well for months not feeling well, and then you put them through the scanner and there's a big mass or somewhere or something, and they're like, God, I didn't even notice. And you're like, well, you've lost 3 stone in weight in the last 4 months, how did you not notice? And they're like, oh, well, I just put on the bigger jumper and didn't say anything to the wife, didn't want to annoy anybody, didn't want to cause a fuss, didn't want to cause a fuss is a big one. So these sort of hardcore men, they end up sort of going under the radar, and then all of a sudden it's an
It
explosion.
explodes.
Yeah, big
Okay.
time.
I have to ask you, do people come in with sexual injuries? Or do they, sorry, let me do people come in with injuries that you would perceive to be sexual, but they're not saying anything because they're too embarrassed?
No, very rarely, like very, very rarely.
But it's happened.
Once or twice.
Okay. What are we talking? What objects are we talking?
Well, you're going to ask me, has anyone put anything up their rectum?
Yes. Has anyone put anything up there that you found very difficult to get out?
No, a few of my colleagues have come to me and said, oh, this person has this, and you've seen the x-ray or whatever, and it's interesting, some of the stuff. The stories usually are they fell on it, etc., etc. But luckily, I've never been involved in that because that'd be a nightmare to get out. You know, that's a surgeon's job. That's not that's not really my job. But it's a surgeon usually involved in that because you can do a lot of damage depending on what's up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once that's in, it takes a bit of stuff to get that out. So you need to get that out ASAP. But what I would usually see are sometimes people will come in injuries. Maybe if it got too rough or vigorous or whatever, it might do a bit of damage, cuts or snap a wee string or something and that sort of thing. But there's very little you can do for them. You just sort of have to let it heal and repair and sort of reassurance. A lot of the emergency department is reassuring people, like to say, look, listen, you've done this, but it'll be grand. If it goes this way, you're good. If it goes that way, come back and see me. And that's usually the best way to treat it.
So people can go out, they can be a bit rough and things can snap and you can literally break your penis.
Well,
I know exactly what bit you're talking about.
Yeah, you can play a bit of country music on it in some.
Yeah. Are there a lot of men? Can I talk about circumcision for a second? Is there a lot of men in this country that still do it? What are your thoughts on that?
Very rare. I come across it. Very rare. We do a lot of male catheterization, so you would be in and around that area. You would never. It's not really a thing in Northern Ireland. I know in America and a lot of places, like it's almost like the done thing.
It's the done thing. I've nephews and I know people in the States, and it's a thing that they just do when boys are a certain age. Is there a medical reason it should be done?
It's very hygienic. Mm-hmm. You can get a thing called phimosis where the foreskin sort of closes over the top and then you have to get it cut off if it gets too tight because it can cause a bit of a trappage to the opening. But in Northern Ireland especially, and the UK and Ireland, circumcision would be either based on your faith if you were from a Jewish background or if you had some kind of medical issue that caused it. Very rare have I seen it where... And I'll be completely honest, hands up. If I am interacting with somebody and I see they're circumcised, I'll say, oh, cool. Are you Jewish? And they'll say, usually no or whatever. And then I'll say, oh, why did you get that done?
Yeah.
And most of the time it was because either it got too tight or they had a problem after intercourse or they were getting lots of infections around the tip.
Gotcha.
And they had to get it removed. But very few would get it removed for like performance or
would it affect sensation?
Big time, yeah. Yeah, because it's obviously you've got a hat on.
Yeah.
And you can't really feel the weather if you've got the hat on.
Sure.
So you want to feel the weather sometimes.
You do. Sometimes you do. Make sure you wear your SPF though. Very important. Men and hygiene. And like, they're not teaching it in schools, obviously, how to look after your bits. I mean, I'm very good with the vagina. I know it's a self-cleaning oven. Don't be putting anything down there that's perfumed or anything. But what about men's bits?
I think you can kind of crack on. It's all usually very well covered. Don't put anything down the tunnel and you'll be fine.
Oh, that's very sound advice.
Yeah.
I love that.
Take the hat off every now and then, scrub the head.
Okay. Soapy, even?
Just water and a bit of manual rubbing is usually fine. Not that sounded weird after the fact, but a bit of soap wouldn't do any harm. There's no reason not to use it, but usually that time. And of course, when you're in that shower and they're nice and warm, give them a rub. Make sure they're all smooth and symmetrical and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Let's go back to social media for a second because would you say younger men of today have it easier in a way because they'll just be looking at TikTok or Instagram and be like, oh, he said, this might be an issue. I'll go and get it checked. There's a lot more conversation happening online. Would you see that as a positive thing?
There's a lot more conversation between certain groups, I find. I find like there's either people who interact with it and people who don't. But I think social media has a huge falsity to it. Like there's
Misinformation?
not misinformation, but people telling half truths and people sort of putting out a little bit of information that isn't very well structured, isn't sort of researched, or isn't backed by any knowledge whatsoever. Like you could have somebody with no medical background, not even in pharmacy, nursing, no interaction with patients, no clinical expertise whatsoever, and they're doling out advice of a medical nature on social media, and there's absolutely no one restricting that whatsoever.
How often should men go for their checkups?
What do you mean by checkup?
I mean a full medical.
Like a full medical?
Yeah, and should it be more regular the older you get?
The older you get, yes.
What are we talking time-wise now?
I would think yearly is a good way
Okay.
to get you just simple bloods done. Simple bloods. You don't need scans. You don't need all this. Nobody needs to be sticking their finger up your bum.
Okay.
But
if you want that,
kind of carry on. If you really want that, there's ways to get that
websites.
done.
Yeah.
But once a year, if you get the bloods done, keep yourself in good nick. It's not a bad way to go.
We have to talk about dancing again, just for a second, because that was all sequins and not your typical, stereotypical, manly, stoic man. How did you cope with that? I mean, did you have to find your more vulnerable side to be on the show?
Yeah, that was tough for me now. I would be a manly, like my dad was a manly man. I was a manly man. My grandfathers, one was a butcher and a beef farmer and the other one was a dairy farmer. Like there was no
sequence.
Yeah, no sequence in my lifestyle. So I did, when I went in to the meeting at the start with the producers, I said, don't be putting me in and out of a sparkly pink suit. And then week one on the waltz, sure wasn't I in a pink suit.
You were, and you look great.
But so I had to concede a few things along the way, but I enjoyed actually the dress up of it. I hated the fake tan now. God, you look great, but I hated it, the smell of it, sleeping in it. But you did look like it was nice having the tan.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But I struggled with a lot of like the makeup and that sort of stuff, but not struggled as in like, oh, I'm a real man, I don't wear makeup. I just didn't like it on my face.
Yeah, well, it was alien to you. Yeah,
it was a very different feeling. But I found the more I get into it, the more you give yourself over to it, the more enjoyable the process was. Like you can only push back against the wave so much. You just have to kind of let it take you. And the more I let it take me and enjoyed the process.
Last question, because we all know the rumours about the Olympic Village. And them running out of certain things. Is it as wild as I dream, as I imagine? Obviously, you're not getting involved, but are people at it? Are they at what? Can they not keep their bloody hands off each other? Is it just part and parcel?
There's several ways to answer this question. The first way to answer it is the way that people usually react the best to, and it usually gets the best reaction, is to just say, can't say anything about there now. Sorry, don't know anything, don't know what you're talking about. And you play cool and you say you don't know what's going on, but you actually make it sound like you do know what's going on. But you don't really it's a strange place. It's like in Tokyo, we stayed in the village. In Paris, we only got into the village for a few days after the competition was over. We stayed outside in a hotel, which was closer to the rowing course. But Tokyo obviously was weird because it was COVID times. But when I say my Instagram DMs were getting a lot of requests.
Wow.
Very forward requests. Strangely enough, not very often from athletes, but from maybe the support staff who were traveling with the athletes, who maybe had a bit more time on their hands. But we were getting tested for COVID every morning. You had to spit in a wee tube, and then they did a rapid sample every day that you had to show that you weren't, because as soon as if you tested for COVID, you were 10 days in a hotel and then shipped home. That was it. Like there was no comebacks. Your Olympic final could be in the next morning and you're gone, you're out. So we were very cautious, but the requests came.
They still came.
The attention came. And I'd say if you were some way inclined to green light that attention, you could have some fun.
Okay. And would it be akin to the same attention that you would get from Dancing with the Stars?
No, I'd say the attention I got from Dancing with the Stars was lovely. It was more people's kids sending me lovely videos,
Oh,
wishing
that
me
is
good
nice.
luck, and
Bit
walking
boring,
around
but
Super
yeah.
Value and someone going, Daddy, please don't dance with the
Yeah.
stars. But then the Paris experience was, I was in a long-term relationship for Paris, and it was a very different experience, but I was able to sort of live vicariously through other people being like, what's the story? Is there much going on? Is there anything happening? Are you up to any badness or whatever? And they were kind of like, no, not really. So there's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of like horror stories.
Don't ruin the dream.
Person getting caught with this many other people and all these stories. I don't know where the people had the time. Like, you'd be far too busy, to be honest. You'd be training, recovering, getting to bed early. Like, people take the Olympics very seriously. It's maybe the time after they're finished, but I'd say it's more the support staff, to be honest, that are cotton on. But there was a big bag of Johnnies, and it was huge, and they're Paris branded, and I have a couple of them in the house just more for their mementos. They're kind of cool looking. They had a wee fold out, and it was in with a wee message and all inside. And there was one of the girls in our team now, not the girl you would expect. She would be quite good living, and she was running around with this huge big bag being like, we have this massive bag, does anybody want one? And I didn't know what they were. I thought they were badges, but when you open them up, then inside's the Johnny. And I was like, what are they? I'll have a few. And then I lifted them up, and I was like, I'll not tell you her name. And she was like, I was like, are you giving these out? And she was like, yeah, I need to get rid of them. And so there's surplus. They haven't run out yet.
You still have them.
There were
there.
surplus.
There you
So they're still there, and they're able to use. And they looked like they were good quality.
Amazing. Philip, thank you so much for joining me today. You have been an absolute pleasure. And thanks for all that information.
Thanks for having us. Jennifer Samprelli not on the telly anymore.